Welcome, everybody, to this month's Lender Lowdown with the wonderful Miss Hailey Modin. Hailey, to shoot us off this week, I actually want to know what's something exciting and happening in your world besides Sweet Baby Girl.
Oh, Sweet Baby Girl is definitely so exciting. Other exciting things, my husband and I have a small business that we are working on, and it is growing. We closed on our first land purchase
Did
last
you?
week.
Yay!
Yep. So we are proud owners of just a little plot of land, and we are so excited to build a commercial building on it. So
Wow. Oh
yes,
my gosh. I was literally talking to my mom about you today, and I was like, Hailey and her husband are a force to be reckoned with, and I just like pray for them all the time because you guys are killing it.
you're
And
so
so,
sweet. Thank you. It's definitely a lot, kind of all at this early stage, I feel like, but like give us a couple more years, and I feel like we'll be a little more settled and less
yes.
chaotic. But maybe we're just as chaotic, just different.
I think, yeah, it just continues.
How about you? What other exciting things are happening?
Something that is exciting. I don't know. I feel like things in my personal life and work life is just that I continue to grow and learn more all the time. And I think that once you get to the mindset that that just is what it is, and finding joy in the small moments and just appreciating every little moment is kind of the mindset that you need to have all the time to be able to appreciate it all and want to keep going. So,
Yeah, I feel like that adds a lot of fulfillment to life if you're just enjoying the little things.
yes.
You're like, oh, I feel very good about life.
Yes. Yes. So, what is happening with rates this month? Are we continuing on a decline or?
Yes, things have been favorable for interest rates for mortgages. Yeah, dropping down closer to that 6% mark, which is super exciting. 6% is a really pivotal number for a lot of borrowers who close on a home purchase at 7%
Yeah.
or higher. Generally, it's going to be more favorable to refinance for them once they hit 6%. So that's what I'm seeing for a lot of clients, a lot of numbers right now.
Okay. So, after, what was it, like the last year and a half, 2 years that we've seen this high jump in interest rates, would you say that most of those people closed north of like 7.5 or just kind of all throughout the 7 range as far as interest rates go? I mean, I have a couple
Yeah,
clients that closed in like the low 8s, so.
yes, that is definitely possible that they're in 8. But I would say majority are between 7 and 7.5 for purchases in the last 12 to 18 months. There were a couple points in which people could even be in the high 6s just from those last 12 months. But I would say it depends, of course, on every client, but most of them, I would say, are not under 6.5%.
So then, for the ones that are in the 7s, what interest rate are we watching to hit before they could refinance? And it would be worth it.
Good question. Yes. So I would say generally you want to be 1% lower than wherever you are currently. That's just like a rule of thumb. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a hard fast situation, but the biggest challenge I will say with most of my clients right now who closed in the last 12 to 18 months is they were first-time homebuyers, a lot of them, and they don't have a lot of equity in their property, and that can be a challenge when it comes to refinancing. So most of the time, the way that a refinance is paid for is that the closing costs, any costs associated with the refinance, would be built into that loan amount. So you have to have some equity there to increase your loan amount a little bit, and that allows a borrower to refinance with zero cash out of pocket, which can be really favorable.
But if they wanted to refinance, if there was such a big difference in their monthly, and say they were willing to bring up the, what is it, typically 2 to 3% to refinance, they could just pay out of pocket.
They could, yeah, absolutely. And that definitely could make sense for certain borrowers, and the other nice thing is, so a couple of things to keep in mind, I guess, while like as interest rates come down, the first thing I like to remind people is timing the market. Everybody wants a really good deal, and there's a lot of good deals to be had, even if you don't, quote unquote, get the best deal, right?
Sure.
So be wary of like timing the market or trying to time the market. It's more favorable to get in and look at a purchase now than wait and try and time it when the rates are the lowest and then start shopping. You're going to have a lot more competition, right?
Sure.
So that's just something to keep in mind. And also, if you can get in right earlier than later, I guess, with the rates trending down, then you could likely get a lower purchase price than if you were at the lowest interest rate, kind of depending on where the market goes, right? You're going to be paying more probably for a house. And so I have a really cool presentation, and I'll send you this link, Emily, so that you can even include it if you want in the newsletter. Yeah. But it's a side-by-side comparison of like a $400,000 purchase at like a 6.5% interest rate, but then we can refinance down to like 5.5%, hopefully, assuming rates drop to 5.5%, versus a 425 purchase. So kind of assuming that $25,000 increase in price when that rate does come down to 5.5%. You're going to have a monthly payment that's over $100 cheaper at that if you refinanced at that 400,000 purchase instead of that 425 purchase. Yes. 5.5% interest rate. So that's kind of just something to keep in mind, is that like rates come down, prices generally go up. Now that's going to be even more favorable for the refinance, right? So if you had bought that $400,000 purchase price and your value of your home is now 425, and the rates have come down, you've got equity and a lower rate, all around much better situation.
Yeah, and I always like to say as a reminder too, people are like, oh, I absolutely love that house, but the market wasn't for me, and so I didn't jump on it. But then like when the market does get to you and you're like, oh, I can't find any house that I like, versus the situation that you just listed where if you could have, maybe it felt extra expensive for a couple of months. And I will say right now, the market and what I'm seeing is very interesting. 425 and under, we're definitely seeing more buyers enter the market since the rates have come down, but prices are still kind of, either they've leveled, or sometimes depending on the house, there is a good deal to be had because it sits for anywhere from like 30 to 45 days. Those houses typically need a little bit more work and a little bit more love, but if you're willing and want to get into the market, there are some good deals, as you said. Good deals to be had, depending on if you don't want the brand new construction home or the fully remodeled and you're willing to, paint a little and do some flooring. So,
yes, for sure. Another thing I like to remind people is in terms of timing the market, if you do purchase now, to be mindful of whichever lender you're working with if you are financing, prepayment penalties. So some lenders have prepayment penalties. I'd say they're not super crazy common, but depending on your loan situation, if you pay off a loan before, sometimes like 6 months, different number of months for different lenders, there can be a penalty. So that would mean if you refinance within that window. So just be mindful of how quickly you would have the opportunity to refinance, given that rates allow you to, and you have the equity allowed to make it work.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
All the things. Any other notes that are important that you'd like to talk about on refinancing?
Yes, for refinancing, I'd say there's a lot of sale pitches, I guess, from different lenders or a servicer. So servicers, like whoever you make your payments to, right, for your mortgage, they're trying to sell like no cost refinances or just like really low rates that maybe you're paying a lot for. So I would say just be wary of the sales pitch for refinances from whether it's other lenders or a servicer. And being careful to look at, even if it costs you $0 out of pocket, look at what the fees are for a refinance. There are almost always fees included in a refinance. So just be wary of that as a consumer. And for the lowest interest rate, maybe they're pitching you a 4.5% interest rate, and you're like, oh my goodness, that sounds amazing. That would save me hundreds of dollars a month, which absolutely could. But if it costs you thousands and thousands of dollars to get that rate, it's definitely worth reconsidering and seeing, is it worth it now? Should you wait a little bit longer? Kind of definitely doing your self-evaluation and not just trusting whatever promotion that you're seeing out there.
Put in front of you. With
and
the refinance, does an appraiser come out and do a reappraise?
Good question. It depends. It really depends on what kind of comparable homes are in the area. Sometimes we can do an automated appraisal or get an appraisal waiver. I'd say those are fairly common depending on how much equity the client has in the property. Sometimes we want an appraisal to see how much equity, they've gained in the property. So yeah, it depends. sometimes there are in-person appraisers that go out, like traditional appraisal that is done on a refinance, but not always.
Okay.
Yeah, good question. The one other thing I like to say is that with a refinance, if you time it correctly, you can potentially skip 2 months of mortgage payments back to back. And that can be a lot of savings, especially as we're headed into the holiday season. So just something to consider. 2 months of mortgage payments that you don't need to pay, right now would be really cool. And again, it's all kind of included in the whole refinance process, and that is bigger picture. But for the short term, it could be very beneficial, kind of leading into the winter holiday season, to skip 2 mortgages.
How do you necessarily time that correctly?
Yes. So you want to close your loan before the 15th of the month. So we'd want to close, like right now, we would be like, hey, let's close, September 5th or whatever.
Okay.
And then you wouldn't make your September payment, and then you would automatically skip your October payment. So your first payment would be November 1st.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it could happen, and something to consider if you are doing a refinance. You're like, I'm doing this. This makes sense to make the request to have your closing before the 15th of the month.
Sweet. That's a good little extra note.
Little extra you didn't know.
Yeah, didn't know. Sweet. Well, that was definitely a lot of information that I didn't know about refinances.
Okay.
Would you say that, it's always just good to reach out and ask, right?
Yes, it does not hurt. It's free to run numbers. I would say majority of lenders are offering what we call a soft credit pull, so you don't even need a hard credit inquiry on your report, to just see what the numbers are, what they could be, and kind of run that scenario, especially if you're making more money than you did when you purchased, and your payment's going to be lower. Like, that would be cool.
Yeah.
If you need cash out of your property and you have a lot of equity, I have one lady who did a huge down payment on a home back in May last year. Financial situation changed, and she's like, really, I wish I hadn't put all that money on that down payment. I'm wondering if I could cash out on some of the equity. And so we're running numbers for her, and so far it's making sense. So
sweet.
Yeah,
wow.
That's kind of lots of opportunity there.
So even on the backside, once you've purchased a home, don't be afraid to reach out to your lender after the fact and see what is going on in the market and if there's anything that can be done to help you out.
For sure. Yes, I'm doing annual reviews for all of my clients right now and running numbers for them and calling them and be like, hey, did you know you could save this kind of money? And they're like, oh my gosh, please sign me up.
That's awesome.
So
wow. Yeah. That's dedicated lender.
I know. I'm like trying to take care of my people.
Yes. Same. Sweet. Well, I think that is a great topic for this month. A ton of information. If you have any other lending questions, feel free to reach out to Hailey. Otherwise, we will see her next month.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah.